per private residence for personal use. There are certain restrictions on the personal use of marijuana that's set forth in the Act. There's no smoking in public places, no smoking where smoking tobacco is prohibited, no smoking within 1,000 feet of a school, daycare center, or youth center. That's a generalized statement of that section of the statute. It's a little more detailed, but that's a general overview of that section. No smoking while driving or riding in a vehicle, and employers may maintain a drug-free workplace policy. We are the recipient of federal funding, and as one of the requirements of receiving that federal funding is maintaining a drug-free workplace policy, which the city of Turlock does. And in order not to jeopardize that federal funding, we will continue to do. Okay, with respect to the personal cultivation of marijuana, as I said, local governments may reasonably regulate but not prohibit personal indoor cultivation of up to 6 plants within a private residence. A private residence is defined under the statute as a house, an apartment unit, a mobile home, or other similar dwelling. It includes the cultivation within an accessory structure to the private residence located on the grounds of that private residence that is fully enclosed and secure and is not visible from a public space. And as we get into the regulations or the proposed regulations, we will further define fully enclosed and secured through our standards. Local governments may regulate or prohibit personal outdoor cultivation. So what are reasonable regulations on the personal cultivation of marijuana? Examples include a local requirement that personal cultivation comply with the fire code, building code, and electrical code. And if I might just step back, the intent of the regulations is to protect the public health, safety, and welfare of your citizens. So compliance with these building code standards is an effort to ensure safety. A local requirement for a residential cultivation permit with the appropriate fee and the property owner's authorization. The statute specifically authorizes the obtaining of the property owner's authorization. Requiring as a condition of the permit that the permit holder agree to periodic inspections to ensure that the cultivation is not in excess of the state limit of 6 plants, is not drawing more electrical power from the grid than the structure or house is designed to withstand, thereby causing a fire hazard, and presenting a health hazard such as mold accumulation. So the state will be licensing commercial operations of non-medical marijuana activities. The Department of Consumer Affairs will be regulating transportation, storage, distribution, and sales. The Department of Food and Agriculture will be regulating cultivation, and the Department of Public Health will be licensing and regulating manufacturing and testing laboratories, with the regulations adopted and licensing to begin no later than January 1st of 2018. With respect to the commercial operations, all non-medical marijuana businesses must have a state license. State licenses cannot be issued to an applicant whose operations would violate the provision of any local ordinance or regulation. That's an effort to retain the local control. And state licenses are valid for 1 year, and a state license will be required for each business location. Again, cities may adopt and enforce ordinance regulating or completely prohibiting state licensed marijuana businesses, but you may not prohibit the use of your public roads for deliveries in another jurisdiction. So if an operator was delivering non-medical marijuana to another city and they had to go through Turlock in order to get there, you could not prohibit that. However, you can still prohibit deliveries from originating or terminating in the city of Turlock. The state standards with respect to regulation are minimums. Cities may establish additional standards regarding health and safety, environmental protection, testing, security, food safety, and worker protections. So the AUMA includes taxing provisions. There's going to be a 15% state excise tax on the gross retail sales of non-medical marijuana, and there's going to be a cultivation tax on both the flowers and the leaves. Marijuana cultivated for personal use is exempt from the cultivation tax, and medical marijuana is exempt from state and local sales tax. The AUMA does not prevent cities and counties from imposing local taxes except sales tax on medical marijuana. The tax revenue generated will be distributed, first of all, to those agencies that have licensing and regulatory authority over the industry, and then 60% for youth programs, 20% for environmental cleanup and remediation, and 20% for state and local programs that reduce DUI and grant programs designed to reduce negative health impacts resulting from marijuana legalization. However, a city that bans cultivation, including outdoor personal cultivation or the retail sale of marijuana, is not eligible for this grant funding. So what are the City of Turlock's current regulations? Currently, the City Council adopted an ordinance regarding marijuana, particularly medical marijuana, and we currently prohibit commercial cannabis activities as defined by the Medical Marijuana Regulation and Safety Act. We also prohibit all deliveries of medical cannabis. We prohibit all activities for which a state license is required under the Medical Marijuana Regulation and Safety Act. We prohibit all cultivation of marijuana in the city of Turlock. And then finally, that last bullet point was in anticipation of an initiative that may legalize the recreational use of marijuana. And what the council decided at the time was, in the event that there is future legislation or initiative that authorizes recreational marijuana, the prohibitions contained in that section of the Turlock Municipal Code would apply to recreational marijuana to the greatest extent permitted by law. So some of the regulations and amendments are intended to implement that last section that I just went over. The Turlock Municipal Code also contains business license regulations that we shall not approve licenses or uses that violate federal law, that we will not approve licenses or uses for medical marijuana collectives, cooperatives, dispensaries, or any other commercial cannabis activity, that we will not approve licenses or uses for the distribution, cultivation, manufacturing, transportation, delivery, testing, or processing of medical marijuana, and that we shall not approve a license for which a license is required under the Medical Marijuana Regulation and Safety Act. So now we're going to talk about the proposed amendments to the Turlock Municipal Code. Again,
Can I just ask a question, real quick, clarification? So
marijuana, Article 2 deals with non-medical marijuana. The proposed amendments, again, are intended to implement that last paragraph we just went over under the current regulations. So we would prohibit commercial marijuana activities as that's defined under state law. We would prohibit all deliveries of non-medical marijuana within the city of Turlock. We would prohibit all activities for which a state license is required pursuant to the AUMA. We would prohibit outdoor cultivation of marijuana, and we would, Article 3 looks to regulate the personal cultivation of non-medical marijuana indoors. So these regulations now would relate to the indoor cultivation of marijuana. So indoor cultivation of non-medical marijuana is prohibited except in a private residence. Again, the private residence is defined by statute, or inside an accessory structure to a private residence located upon the grounds of the private residence that is fully enclosed and secure. That language is also directly out of the AUMA. Cultivation by an individual 21 years of age or older will have to meet certain minimum requirements. Again, the primary use of the property shall be for a residence. A residential cultivation permit will be required prior to commencing indoor non-medical marijuana cultivation. All areas used for cultivation of non-medical marijuana shall comply with Title 8 building regulations, which include your fire code, your electrical code, your mechanical code, and Title 9 zoning regulations of the Turlock Municipal Code, as well as applicable law. The use of gas products for the cultivation of marijuana is prohibited. Any fully enclosed secure structure or residential structure must have a ventilation and filtration system installed that shall prevent marijuana plant odors from exiting the interior of the structure, and that shall comply with the building regulations of the Turlock Municipal Code. Indoor grow lights shall not exceed 1,200 watts per light and shall comply with the California Building, Electrical, and Fire Code. And the maximum area that may be used for cultivation is 100 square feet, but no more than 6 plants at any one time, because that's what's authorized under state law. You'll have to have an adequate mechanical locking or security system installed as part of the fully enclosed and secure structure. Obviously, that's to ensure the security of the structure or the residential structure, including the garage prior to commencement of the cultivation. And it shall be limited to 6 plants per private residence, regardless of whether the marijuana is cultivated inside the residence or inside the fully enclosed and secure structure. And the limit of 6 plants per private residence shall apply regardless of how many individuals reside at the private residence. The residential structure shall remain at all times a residence with the legal and functioning cooking, sleeping, and sanitation facilities. Cultivation of non-medical marijuana shall only take place on impervious surfaces. And from a public right-of-way, there shall be no exterior evidence of non-medical marijuana cultivation occurring on the parcel. Non-medical marijuana cultivation shall not be visible by normal unaided vision from a public place. The cultivation area, whether it's fully enclosed and secure structure inside the residential structure, shall not be accessible to persons under 21 years of age. And written consent to the property owner to cultivate marijuana within the residential structure shall be obtained and shall be kept on the premises and available for inspection by the police chief or his or her designee. A portable fire extinguisher that complies with state regulations and standards shall be kept in the enclosed and secure area or inside the residence where the cultivation is occurring, and the permit applicant shall agree to certain inspections to ensure compliance with the Turlock Municipal Code and state law. So these regulations now apply to accessory structures. So when the cultivation is occurring within a fully enclosed and secure accessory structure, the cultivation of marijuana shall be located in the rear 1/3 of the lot and shall maintain the minimum yard setbacks as defined under the Turlock Municipal Code and a minimum of a 10-foot setback from any property line, whichever is greater. The yard where the fully enclosed and secure structure maintained must be enclosed by a solid fence at least 6 feet in height. This provision shall not apply to cultivation occurring in a garage for obvious reasons. The maximum height of the accessory structure shall be 15 feet. When the proposed cultivation is located within either attached or detached garage, the area of cultivation shall be screened from public view when the doors are open. And the doors shall have physical lock to prevent accidental entry by persons less than 21 years of age. When the portion of the garage is separated by a permanent wall or barrier, such that the required parking is eliminated, the parking shall be replaced on site in a manner that is compliant with Title 9 of the zoning regulations. So there are several questions and direction that we are seeking from the council. First, do you want to regulate the indoor cultivation of non-medical marijuana for personal use? If you want to do that, Article 3 of the proposed amendments to the Turlock Municipal Code provide for some regulation of the indoor cultivation. Do you want to regulate or ban the outdoor cultivation of non-medical marijuana for personal use? The prior ordinance that was adopted did just that. It banned the outdoor cultivation of marijuana. Again, implementing the language that was in the prior ordinance, specifically to address the AUMA, we've sought to prohibit the outdoor cultivation as well in order to implement the policy that's currently in effect. Do you want to enact business regulations for medical and or non-medical marijuana businesses? Again, those licenses will start to be issued no later than January 1st of 2018, so there's some time to have that discussion, and if there's a desire to implement regulations, there will be time to implement those regulations. However, regardless of whether you do or you don't, if you do, we would still recommend that you proceed with the proposed amendments to Title II so that we can maintain the status quo, retain that local control as it relates to non-medical marijuana businesses. Do you want to enact land use regulations for medical and/or non-medical marijuana businesses? Is there a desire to impose local taxes on marijuana? And finally, do you want to participate in a countywide discussion related to the proposed regulations and taxation of both medical and non-medical marijuana? And when I'm talking about those, I'm talking about the commercial activities related to medical and non-medical marijuana. That concludes my presentation. I'll be happy to answer any questions either now or during the course of the workshop.
Can I take the meeting back?
Yes.
All right, perfect, yeah.
Can I ask a question?
Sounds good, yeah, absolutely.
I got a
Councilmember
couple
Goodlatte.
just cop questions, and then we'll go from there. First and foremost, non-medical, there is no prescription, so how are you going to help us to say that something's medical or not medical when we don't know if it's, I mean, a recommendation is not a prescription, so where are we at?
Yeah. So there are certain new requirements for under the AUMA related to medical marijuana, but it's still a challenge to, I think you're going to, I don't want to say the legitimacy, but validation of, and these regulations, we still are prohibiting the cultivation of marijuana for medical purposes. Because the state statute says we have to allow the indoor cultivation, we are proposing regulations as it relates to that. Regardless of whether you're a medical marijuana user or a recreational marijuana user, you have the ability to cultivate up to 6 plants currently. But I think some of the challenges still exist.
Yes, Vice Mayor DeHart.
Thanks, Mayor. Thanks, Ms. Norton. I just have a real quick question, just for, it seems to me that somewhere between initiation of this piece of ordinance and the voting booths and the resultant, something miraculous must have happened. Have we had any kind of involvement with the FDA in terms of saying either medical or recreational use of this stuff is acceptable and non-harmful? Have we had any kind of indication from them that this has in fact the case?
So marijuana is still listed as a Schedule I controlled substance. Did I get the right schedule? That has not changed.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Yes, Councilman.
Yes, Ms. Norton, I understand we cannot use sales tax or state tax, and you can do excise tax, but we can also attach fees, correct? Local fees, other than those?
You can. For the regulatory program, you can impose a regulatory fee in order to recover the reasonable cost of that regulatory program. But again, it cannot exceed the cost, then it becomes a tax.
Thank you.
And just a quick reminder, this is a workshop, so if you have questions, just raise your hand, and if there's an extra microphone, City Attorney, if you could stay where you are and just
Okay.
field questions.
Yep.
I'd like this to be a little bit more informal, because this is time for you to ask questions about this ordinance and know what it is and isn't. And then if you have specific guidance, that can be for 7F later on in the regular city council meeting. So are there any questions from the audience? Yes, please. And we'll get you the microphone just so everyone can. Well, we need the people at home to hear. Thanks. I appreciate it though.
Okay, just one question here. Were the city licenses be limited to a certain number?
Are you
In the
referring
sense
to,
that, were there only be a certain number of licenses issued for commercial growing?
that determination has not been made yet. Currently, we prohibit
I
commercial
understand,
marijuana activities,
But,
and so.
but you had indicated that by January 1 of 2018, that would be in the works or in place.
State licensing would begin January 1st, no later than January 1st of 2018.
Okay, if we have a state license, then are we also going to have to procure a city license?
A local license
A local
from
license?
the local jurisdiction, yes.
Okay,
But
if we do go through and we work out and get a state license, will we be guaranteed one from the city?
the state will not issue a license unless the cities authorize
Okay,
the commercial marijuana activities.
okay,
And so currently that is not permitted, so the state should not be issuing licenses in the city of Turlock. The city of Turlock currently, based upon our current regulations, will be sending our ordinance to all of the departments that were listed in my PowerPoint slide, indicating what our current regulations are and ensuring that they understand currently that that activity is prohibited in the city of Turlock. If that changes, we would obviously reach out to those same departments to advise them that the regulations have changed. Here are what our regulations are, so that they do not issue licenses that are incompatible with our local ordinances.
thank you.
You bet.
And since we're not filling out blue cards, what was your name again?
My name is Brad Clemens.
Brad Clements. Thanks. Right. So if you could just state your name as well, we're gonna. Thank you. Thank you, Brad.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Zach Dravon. Ms. Norton, thank you. Council, thank you for the opportunity to speak. Ms. Norton, I'm just wondering if your office has compiled any sort of market projections regarding the positive impact of proactive regulation of the commercial market. Not only the economic benefit, but the positive impact that it stands to have with respect to the marginalization of criminal organizations who profit from cannabis as a contraband commodity.
So I have not compiled any of that information. However, I do know that there are certain studies from states that have legalized the recreational use of marijuana, Colorado and some of the others. I know that there is information out there. The police chief can probably speak more specifically to that, but we have reviewed that, and the documents say what they say. The experience has been what it's been, and so I'll leave it at that. Thank you for the question, Zach.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments from the audience? Chairman of the board, would you like to address the council?
I wasn't clear on the Adult Use Act. You can regulate if you were to allow them to grow 6 plants. They're going to come in and get a permit. You make sure their lighting is okay, just what you went through. Did they clean that language up on the medical side? Are you allowed to permit that to make sure that the indoor grows it's being done correctly?
So on the medical side, we have complete authority to regulate, in my opinion. There is no limitation other than the limitation that's set forth in the recommendations, except that, there is some statutory square footage that's identified in the statute related to that. But I think we still have local authority to regulate in that area as well. And to me, it's broad authority under our police powers to regulate for the public health, safety, and welfare. But and let me just take it one step further. If you're asking if under the AUMA, it specifically says that local agencies may reasonably regulate the indoor cultivation. Does that exact language appear in the Medical Marijuana Regulation and Safety Act? No, it does not. Correct. Yes.
Any other questions? All right. Any additional questions from the council? Yes, Councilman DeHart.
I do have one additional question. I didn't invest the time in matching the content of the slides in the PowerPoint to the actual ordinance itself. Is this a proposed ordinance based upon the information presented? Is this?
Correct. And we do have the ordinance that I can pull up on the overhead and just kind of briefly walk you through it, but I've hit all the major points in terms of regulation.
Okay.
And,
My concern was really, is it reflective of what you presented?
yes.
Thank you.
Any additional questions or comments from the council? All right, one last chance. Anyone from the audience have additional questions or comments? All right, I'll close public participation. Thank you so much, City Attorney. As I mentioned, no formal action is going to be taken on this subject at this time. It's just a workshop for information. If you would like to stick around for item 7F, I believe, at a regular City Council meeting, which will start at 6 o'clock. City Manager.
Mr. Mayor, if council would be inclined to provide staff with some direction relative to the city's continued engagement with the countywide effort and the committee that was established and has been chaired by the county board chairman, Mr. Chiesa. We have been asked if we would like to continue our participation. The board was the activity of the committee, I should say, was postponed until the election cycle had been completed, and now the county is proposing to reinitiate those discussions, pursuing a countywide approach to addressing the issue.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm going to look to the City Attorney if we can discuss this now, right? Or okay, perfect. I've had many conversations with the chairman and then also with my fellow mayors, and I think it is prudent for the city of Turlock to continue engagement at a regional level, at the Stanislaus County level. That's my 2 cents. I don't know how everyone else feels about having that discussion.
I would concur with that, Mayor. I think it's absolutely essential that we don't create pockets of whatever we want to call it, that suggests that, there's a split force on this issue. I think we need to present a united front within our county as to what we do.
Absolutely. Councilman Esquer, anything?
No, I agree with Councilman DeHart. We need to stay on top of what's going on out there so we can keep consistent with everybody else.
All right. Councilman Jacob, any reservations? Councilman Butblock? All right. And then as the other cities, when we discussed, most of the mayors are going to participate unless they delegate someone else to participate. And so I would like to do that. I don't think it needs a formal, it doesn't, yeah, it looks like it's pretty ad hoc, so it doesn't need a formal vote by the council. All right. Perfect.
And from the
City
staff
Manager.
side, myself and the city attorney will continue to co-represent the city as staff on that committee.
Absolutely. All right. Okay. Any last thoughts from the council? All right. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for coming to the workshop on this rainy night. We're going to come back in 20 minutes to start our regularly scheduled program. This workshop is adjourned.
But I thought it was training. I mean, this one's got. No, she's got all that. But to operate, look at the three. It's a little much, right? Yeah. I wouldn't want to do that myself. Was that you about the temperature?
Me?
Was it you or?
It wasn't me, but I am with